Well, hello everyone. This is Malcolm with Best Business Reviews TV, and here we interview people who are regarded as the best in their fields. Today, my guest is Kim Birkhimer. She is a specialist in something called Neurofeedback Therapy, and I can't begin to explain how important this woman is in my life. I've got a few mentors. I've got literally 8 mentors that help me accomplish my goals and make my dreams a reality. And literally 2 of these role models are billionaires. And one of them, the other one happens to be a gentleman named Grant Cardone. And these people are forces of nature in what they do. And Kim is also one of those mentors that give me guidance and a tremendous amount of love and support. Let me put it this way. We have locks on our doors and windows for a reason. It even screens to keep mosquitoes out. So what I'm saying to you is I only let certain things in here that are beneficial to me and my community. And this woman is an absolute delight to work with and to know. So with no further ado, I'm going to ask her a few questions and let her shed some light on her field and her industry. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Malcolm, and thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Absolutely.
Touched. Yeah.
You have been a tremendous influence on me, and I can't thank you for all the help and guidance. It's been a real, it's been an absolute delight to get to know you. But this interview is not about me. It's about the people out here and to get to know what neurofeedback is and how it can help you feel better and how it can, literally be an asset in your life. And my first question is, how did you get involved with this amazing science known as neurofeedback therapy?
Well, it was a long, strange journey. Basically, where to start? I was having health problems, and I have spent almost 40 years in various technology business. The last one was 19 years as CEO of a small family-owned telecommunications corporation, and we did work all over the world. But essentially, the stress of that job was killing me. And in about 2003, I got diagnosed with a blood disorder, and by 2009, they put me on oral chemo, and by 2009, my mental acuity was so bad that I could no longer act in that capacity. I felt like I just I had 14 families and hundreds of contractors depending on me, and I couldn't think. And so I decided I had to sell the business, and that's what I did. As I sold the business and I went home. And at the time, we had a friend who had had many head injuries in his life, and while I was sitting around with nothing to occupy my mind, but not really the physical capacity to do much else, I started Googling, looking for something that would help this person that my husband and I had in our life, who had had many, many head injuries over, starting from the age of 4 and over the course of his lifetime, to see if there was anything out there that was non-pharmaceutical and non-invasive that might help somebody with head injuries. And that's how I found neurofeedback. And that was a decade ago. And my life has changed radically since then. My first thought was to get the equipment, get it on board, and I had kind of an idea in the back of my head that this might be something I could use to help other people. I didn't know if I was ever going to get back into into any kind of a full-time job again or not. Right. But I thought that this might be something that I could do as a small business that I could control on an appointment basis and maybe help other people too. But my first priority was this guy and my husband and myself. My husband was a Vietnam War vet. I'm a military brat. There's a whole tale that goes with that, My dad was a Korea War vet. My brother was a veteran from the Gulf War. I've got a number of nephews and so forth that are still in the military doing their thing. So I thought, well, if this will help my family, we can start there. And I got the equipment and I got set up and I started to learn what I needed to know to be able to be an effective natural therapies board certified neurofeedback specialist. Not a medical professional. I just want to point that out to everybody. And so I was in the process of learning, and my third session, the next morning after the third session, I'd given myself as part of my mentoring and my learning I woke up that morning and I was just stunned at the clarity I had. And that was when I really realized that there was such a thing as chemo fog. And I really, to that point, I knew I had mental acuity problems, but I never attached the term chemo fog to them.
Wow.
And so I was suffering from a ton of chemo fog. I mean, 7 years on oral chemotherapy. So 8 years by that point. So my chemotherapy fog lifted. And, I started working on this gentleman who basically was who I learned most of what I know from, at least certainly in terms of head injuries. And lo and behold, here was a person that prior to doing neurofeedback, he would try to tell you the stories of his life. And when he opened his mouth, it was like he was throwing, 500 pieces of puzzles into the air. And you had to kind of figure out how to put them together to understand what he was saying. I'm convinced that he knew what he was trying to say, but it wasn't coming out. He was so fragmented, he couldn't tell us the stories of his life. But over time and with neurofeedback, he began to be able to reintegrate all of that. And eventually he began to be able to tell us the stories of his life. And his memory improved, as did mine. And my husband, who was a Vietnam War vet, I was obviously doing neurofeedback on him as well. He began to get his sense of humor back, or as some people will call it, that he began to get his joy back.
Wow.
Right? And so neurofeedback just really captivated me when all of this started happening before my eyes. I had no idea what I was really getting myself into when I decided to, set sail on this journey. And it has been just the most remarkable awakening, I'm going to call it, of my adult life, to learn that there are things in the world that are non-pharmaceutical, non-invasive, and highly effective at helping people with these kinds of issues. The FDA allows us to say that neurofeedback reduces stress.
Wow. So this, I'm still in. It's an amazing story, first of all, and I'm in shock that all this happened from curiosity and a Google search, and you're helping so many people get their joy back and feel better.
Yeah. And I'm still shocked about that too, actually. It was totally not a deliberate. It was deliberate that I wanted to help this person. That's what started it. I just wanted to help this one person. I saw how much he was struggling, how much he was suffering. And, even though I was suffering myself, my focus was on what could I do to help this fellow suffering human being. And as a result, his life changed, my husband's life changed. And over the years, I have helped hundreds of people get their joy back. Hundreds of people. And it is the absolute utmost privilege of my life now to be able to do this for people,
People, do you see why I absolutely adore this human being? She created a business that's helping her not only economically, but on a spiritual level, helping other people attain their joy and get their quality of life back. It's absolutely amazing. And that being said, was any other goals that you wanted to accomplish when you first started setting up the neurofeedback clinic? Or
my first goal was I wanted to help him feel better.
Okay.
And then I realized, what it was doing for me as part of that process. And I realized what it was doing for my husband as part of that process. And, for a long time, I wound up on the cover of our little local daily newspaper here. And I don't even remember really how that came to be. I don't remember why the journalist came and asked me to do this story, but he did, and I did the story, and from that I got some referrals, and I didn't really take it very seriously as a business. I just did it as much as I could, when I felt up to it, when somebody was asking me for it. And over the course of years, it developed into, actually the bottom line is 3.5 years ago, my husband died. And as a result of that, I found myself in a situation where now I needed to turn my attention to being able to support myself, and also this this person who I have continued to be a caregiver for. You know, he's still in my life. His brain injuries were so there were so many that, and they've accrued over the course of his lifetime, that you know, I've continued to, and he's been such a benefit to my life because it totally opened this door to a whole new way of thinking about wellness, okay?
Nice.
And made me open to other things that were out there that might be beneficial to people. And so I've done additional things along the way and added to that. But, you know, here I am, and I love what I do. And I am now self-supporting,
Nice.
right? In terms of, you know, this being a primary source of income, although right now with coronavirus, I created this business, I do it out of my home. And so, you know, now I cannot do it out of my home. You know, I fully expect to be doing it out of my home again. So that does not concern me at all. I'm just sad that all the people I had on my schedule that I was looking forward to, you know, helping them ease their way, haven't been able to come in as planned. So, you know, that's all remains to be seen how that all plans out. But what I have, you know, along the way, I've discovered this other thing called Nutrigenomics, you know, and because I was open to looking into that, neurofeedback cleared my chemo fog, but it did not clear the toxic wasteland that was my body.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So when somebody, you know, a friend of mine, actually, another friend of mine who's an occupational therapist and certified hand therapist, approached me and said, Kim, you might want to take a look at this. And I was open to it, right? And I took a look at it. Right. And it was another one of those things that I thought, wow. By then I'd been doing neurofeedback for 3 years. And I thought, wow, if this is for real, there's so much science behind it. If this is for real,
right.
You know, maybe one of three things that could happen, because I was still taking my oral chemo. And so maybe I can take less of my oral chemo. Maybe it'll improve my quality of life. Maybe, hope upon hope, it could cure me. Okay. Well, it didn't cure me. I still have my blood disorder, but it did absolutely improve my quality of life. It detoxified my body. I now, you know, I've been running this home-based business. I've been taking care of somebody with traumatic brain injuries. I manage my own home. I have the energy to sit here on a Saturday afternoon and make a video with you. And so this is something that now it turns out to be very complementary to neurofeedback. So neurofeedback addresses the dysregulation that happens from chronic stress and things like you know, head injuries and car accidents and going to war and growing up in a household that maybe, you know, the parents didn't get along so well or whatever, right? So it helps with that dysregulation.
So let me ask right there. You mentioned that it helps with war as well as old traumas.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, what I'm allowed to say, Malcolm, is that it reduces stress.
Got you. Okay.
And when you're exposed to those kinds of environmental factors, right, that creates stress.
Gotcha.
And if you live with it for long periods of time, that stress builds on itself.
Wow. Yeah.
And not only does it happen in terms of electrical dysregulation in your brain, you know, we're all firing and wiring together neurons as part of our daily experience because we learn from experience. We all learn from experience. And what that means is we're firing and wiring neurons together all the time. But if those neurons aren't firing and wiring together properly, if they're totally dysregulated by chronic stress, then that produces all kinds of other things, you know, like sleep problems, memory problems, mood issues, having a short fuse and not being able to control your own temper and not knowing why, even though you desperately want to stop snapping at your wife or your kids, but you don't seem to be able to control that anymore. Things like that. So when you relieve stress, when you de-stress that situation, it just starts to come off in layers. And one of the beautiful things about it, especially veterans like it, because they don't have to relive. They don't have to relive what they've been through for this to be effective for them.
Wow.
Okay. So the other thing that can happen when you have that kind of chronic stress, the emotional external stress, is that causes cellular stress, and it actually causes cellular damage. And so that's what Nutrigenomics addresses. Nutrigenomics is using nutritional compounds to change gene expression.
Now, what exactly is gene expression?
Okay, so first of all, let me back up a little bit. There's this thing called epigenetics. Epigenetics means above the genome.
Okay.
There's some YouTube videos out there by a guy by the name of Bruce Lipton who posited this theory some time back.
Bruce Lipton?
It's now considered to be science.
Okay.
Hard science. But anyway, it means that if you change, and he talks about the biology of belief. He is a psychologist out of Harvard. Okay, so he talks about the biology of belief. And so if you change the environment, you can change gene expression, is basically the theory. And in his case, he's talking about your belief system. Wow. So if you have positive thoughts and you believe you can, you can. If you have negative thoughts and you believe you can't, you can't. And that affects gene expression, which then in turn affects health and oxidative stress in your body. It damages cells, creates the buildup of oxidative stress in your body, and that accrues to aging and all kinds of other disease processes. So that happens also when you have head injuries. A head injury, the beginning of a head injury, you have impact, let's say, and it begins a cascade of chronic inflammation, which is stress on your brain.
Got it.
And that builds on itself. And so if you can address both the wiring problem and the oxidative stress problem, you have a very complementary approach. It's sort of a two-pronged approach to dealing with much of the problems that people experience and the reasons they come to me.
Wow, that's huge. That is absolutely huge. I guess my final question would be is what transformative experience did you have throughout all this? Because like we spoke about earlier, this came from a simple Google search and curiosity on how you can help a friend. And it not only helped a friend, but it helped you as well as your husband. That's pretty incredible.
Well, that's a pretty big aha moment right there, right? It's a pretty big deal to realize the extent to which your life can be changed by being of service to others.
Wow.
That's huge.
It is. I'm just beginning to realize that myself, and it's helped me. Yeah, you and the other people I'm involved with here definitely influenced me and helped me. I was aware of it textbook-wise, but now I'm experiencing it, and I thank you for that.
Right. I mean, for a lot of my life, I went around thinking, what can I do to help myself? 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 Very sort of self-centered orientation toward life.
Right.
And, interestingly, I wound up sick and on oral chemo, right? Which I continued to stay on for 11 years. And now, as a result of, changing my entire perspective on life and opening my mind to the possibility of alternative therapies, right?
Yeah.
I have found that I can live with my disease without using pharma drugs. Now, that is totally against medical advice.
Right.
But I feel healthier today and happier today than I have ever felt before in my life.
Beautiful.
Okay? And that's not an exaggeration.
Yeah.
That's a reality for me every single day. And every single day, I work really hard to try and help somebody else and stay out of my own head. And with the alternative therapies that I have at my disposal, and that I recommend to all of my clients, it becomes a lot easier to do that. I mean, a lot of times what happens is people want to change and they can't change. And part of that is because their brain isn't cooperating and their underlying health isn't cooperating.
Wow, I've heard that so many times, but you just gave me an aha moment and an epiphany. I finally get it now by you saying that. I've got some friends that have challenges like that because of where they're at. Wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So if you can get your brain to regulate itself electrically, if you can get your cells to heal themselves dynamically, right? And it's a relatively simple process. You just need to know about it, you know? And once you know about it, it's totally easy for you to do. And, you know, it can be quite miraculous, the benefits that it can have in your life. And I'm living testimony to that. I would have never believed. I'm a military brat. My dad was a Air Force NCO, and he was a rough, tough, hard guy to live with. And that's pretty much how I grew up. And I had a very narrow view of life until all of this began to happen. And suddenly my eyes started to open up, and I realized, you know, that there are things going on in this world that we don't know about. Probably the 3 most powerful words I ever learned was I don't know. Right? And once I was able to start admitting that I don't know, a lot of things started to kind of become revealed to me.
Right.
Right. And I began to be able to see. Basically, I began to be able to see. And neurofeedback totally helped me with that. I didn't know how much stress I continued to be under in my life because I'd started working on all of that stuff when I was 30 years old. You know, I'll be 64 this summer. And I started doing neurofeedback when I was 54. And it was remarkable to me, even after all those years, so it was 34 years of personal growth that I'd been motivating myself through mechanically, right, and manually.
Yeah.
When I started doing neurofeedback and started using Nutrigenomics in my life, how dramatically things changed. Dramatically. So I don't know if that's what you were hoping for when we started this conversation, but
it's more than I've been hoping for. And yeah, I've had 3 revelations during this conversation, and hopefully the people watching have gotten some gems out of this too. I really have to thank you for taking the time out today and let me ask you these questions. And how do people reach you? The best way for people to reach you. And people know that we're in a local area in this beautiful paradise known as Sandpoint, Idaho, which is in the northern part of Idaho, very close to Spokane and Coeur d'Alene. So I'm not sure, you know, how close you are to this area, but if you are, Kim may be able to help you feel more joy and improve your quality of life. Kim, how do people reach you?
So I mentioned to you that I offer 2 complimentary sessions by way of a promotion for people if they want to experience neurofeedback. They can access that promotion through sandpointbraintraining.com.
Sandpointbraintraining.com. Got it.
So that's SANDPOINT braintraining.com.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you so much. I will definitely, get that information out to everybody here on watching the video. And again, thank you so much for this. It's been very helpful to me, and I'm sure it'll be helpful to a lot of other people as well.
Well, thank you for inviting me to do it, Malcolm. I've really enjoyed it.
I'm glad. Thank you so much. Cool.
Well, I love sharing what I've learned, you know. I hope people are open enough to be able to see the possibility for themselves and maybe reach out and give it a try. You know, one of the things that I do with my neurofeedback is I offer 2 complimentary sessions because it can be an investment for some people. And I want people to experience the sessions to understand the potential that they hold. And most people in 2 sessions will understand how powerful this particular, it's brain training. It's brain training on steroids, very relaxing. You don't really have to do anything. The instructions that I give to you are sit back, relax, let your mind wander wherever it wants to go. You can even fall asleep in my chair. And, you know, all of that is completely okay. And you will get everything you need, even though you may do that.
Oh my goodness, I'm full in, and I'm sure a lot of other people would be, are too, because wow, there's no work involved. There's a lot of banter and conversation like in normal therapies where you have to get inside your head. You just simply relax and let your thoughts unfold. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically. Don't want you to meditate because we want to separate the mind from the subconscious. And the mind, we don't want the mind pushing for anything.
Wow.
We want the mind relaxing and getting out of the way, okay? And sometimes that takes a few sessions for people to fully understand what that means.
Yeah.
You just kind of start having these little thought bubbles that bubble to the surface, and it's like they're being released from your subconscious. You're taking a look at them, and then they're dissipating, and they no longer haunt you.
Oh, excellent.
So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks again for joining us. Again, this is Malcolm with Best Business Review TV and my good friend, Kim Birkhimer, who is helping a lot of people feel more joy and feel better about themselves and in what they do. Thanks again. Everybody have a beautiful day or night wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, Malcolm.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.